A veteran cop pulled over a luxury car, convinced it was stolen. But the woman behind the wheel was no thief. She was a judge, still in full robe, heading home from court. What happened next would shake the city to its core. The clock on Officer Travis Brenner's cruiser read 6:42 p.m. Evening light bled through the trees lining Saluda Avenue in Columbia, South Carolina. The neighborhood whispered of old money, wide porches, brick mailboxes, manicured silence. He was 2 hours from the end of his shift, nursing lukewarm coffee from a dented thermos, when he spotted a sleek black Mercedes creeping to a stop at a sign. Too slow. It rolled forward, not enough to sight, but just enough to bother him. He flicked his lights on, hand moving instinctively to the radio. Unit 24, initiating a traffic stop. Black Mercedes S-Class, no visible rear plates. Occupied once. The vehicle eased to the curb beneath a blooming dogwood. No sudden moves. No hesitation. The window was already rolling down as he approached. "Evening, officer," came a calm, composed voice. Travis froze mid-step. The woman behind the wheel wasn't what he expected. Not a nervous teen. Not a slick-talking executive. She met his eyes, confident, composed, draped in black judicial robes. And that was only the beginning. She was black, mid-60s maybe. Short silver hair, straight posture, and a gaze that didn't waver. She wore a black robe, judicial, not religious. Her hand rested calmly on the steering wheel, fingers steady. "I'm Judge Renee Mallory," she said, offering a slight nod. "This is my vehicle. I'm heading home from the courthouse." Travis blinked. "License and registration, please." No hesitation. She handed them over like she'd done it 1,000 times. "Any particular reason you pulled me over?" Travis scanned the documents. Everything matched. Name, VIN, registration, clean. But something about it didn't sit right. "Yeah," he said slowly, eyes narrowing. "This car matches the description of a vehicle reported stolen earlier today." Renee lifted an eyebrow. "It's registered to me. You can confirm with dispatch." "I will." He turned back to the cruiser, radioed it in. But his eyes stayed locked on her through the windshield. She didn't flinch, didn't reach for her phone, just sat, watching the sky deepen into dusk. Dispatch crackled. "No stolen report associated with that VIN registration matches." Everything checks out. Still, Travis didn't hand her documents back. He returned to her window. "Mind stepping out of the vehicle for me, ma'am?" Her voice sharpened. "Is that a lawful order?" His hand dropped toward his holster. "Yes." A pause. Long, deliberate. Her eyes never left his. "Are you detaining me?" "I'm asking you to step out. We'll clear things up." A small crowd had started to form. A teenager across the street raised a phone, its red recording light blinking. Renee raised her voice, clear and commanding. "I am Judge Renee Mallory of the 5th Judicial Circuit. This is my personal vehicle. You've confirmed it is not stolen. You are now unlawfully detaining me." Travis flinched, not visibly, but his stance shifted. He knew the law. He knew the camera was on. He knew the eyes on him were multiplying. But that voice inside, the one too proud to back down, kept him standing there. The second time she spoke, her voice cut through the tension like a blade. "You are violating my rights." From across the street, someone called out, "That's Judge Mallory, man!" "She ain't lying," someone in the crowd said. But Travis didn't move. His voice came out tight. "I asked you to step out." "And I asked," Renee replied, firm but even, "if this is legal." Silence. Then a voice from the crowd, low but unmistakably clear. Get your hand off your weapon, officer. Travis flinched. He hadn't realized his fingers were hovering near his holster. Tense, he pulled them back. More phones went up. A woman in the crowd muttered, "She gave my cousin probation last month. She's fair." "You messing up, bro." Travis took a step back. He wasn't sure now. The cameras, the voice, the uniform on his chest felt heavier than before. Renee calmly rolled up the window, 2 inches, not in defiance, just enough. She faced forward, hands still on the wheel. Travis walked back to his cruiser, heart pounding. But the story wasn't ending. It was just starting to crack open. He sat inside, window half down, fingers tapping the steering wheel. Dispatch's voice echoed in his head. "Everything checks out." Still, he didn't pull away. Instead, he stepped out again, more deliberate this time, shut the door behind him like a punctuation mark, and walked slowly back toward her car. The crowd hadn't dispersed. If anything, it had grown. 2 or 3 more faces, more phones, more murmurs. Renee didn't lower the window further. She waited, jaw set, eyes forward. The kind of look that said, "I've been here before." He tapped on the glass, once. She lowered it another 2 inches. "Ma'am," he said, his voice flatter now, "I need to ask a few more questions." "You've already verified my license, my registration." "You know who I am?" she replied. "What else do you need, Officer Brenner?" The way she said his name, calm, precise, dug under his skin, like a gavel strike in court. "How long have you had this vehicle?" he asked. "Since February of last year. Certified pre-owned from Midland's Mercedes." He nodded slowly, pretending to make a mental note. "Paid in full," she added. Her eyes narrowed. "Are you asking how I paid for my car?" "I'm asking because you still think I stole it," she cut in. "No, even after confirmation?" He opened his mouth, closed it. She wasn't done. "Do you ask every driver in this neighborhood how they can afford their car?" "Ma'am, don't twist my words. I'm not. I'm reflecting them." The crowd murmured louder, and Travis Brenner stood there, realizing this wasn't just a stop. It was a moment, and it was no longer his to control. "I don't have to," she said. "They twist themselves." There it was, the shift. She wasn't explaining anymore. She was challenging, still calm, still measured. But the air had changed. Someone behind them muttered, "He better back off." Travis heard it, pretended not to, but it landed, heavy. So did the blinking red light across the street, still recording. Renee glanced at the crowd, then back to him. "Do you know how many hours I've spent this week in courtrooms? Mediating disputes, signing warrants, ruling on bond hearings." A breath. "And you think after all that, I clock out and decide to boost a Mercedes off Divine Street?" He felt small. Still, he asked, "Is this your only vehicle?" Renee leaned her head gently against the window frame, quiet, controlled. "That's the 4th time you've implied I shouldn't be driving this car." "It's not personal," he said. "A lie." "Sure it is," she replied softly. "You don't see me. Not really. You see a possibility you've already decided is true." He looked away, at the grass, the curb, anywhere but her face. "You don't get to carry a badge," she continued, "and walk around with that kind of certainty. Not when it's wrong, not when it puts lives at risk." His chest tightened. The line was thin now, and he could feel it. Then her voice shifted again, lower, not softer. Just real. "You could have run my name and been gone 10 minutes ago. But instead, you're still here, still asking how I bought my own car." He had no answer. Then another car rolled up behind the crowd, a second patrol unit. Officer Marcy Keller stepped out, late 30s, sharp, blonde ponytail swinging as she moved. She approached quickly, eyes scanning, reading the room fast. "Travis," she said under her breath, "what's going on?" "Routine stop," he replied. "Possible stolen vehicle." Marcy glanced at the car, then did a double-take. Her eyebrows rose. "That's Judge Mallory." "I know." Marcy exhaled. "You could hear it. You need to clear this." "I'm trying." "No," she said, quiet but firm. "You're not." But even as help arrived, the moment had already passed the point of repair. The damage had begun to spread, quiet as roots cracking pavement. By the time Officer Marcy Keller walked back to her cruiser, it was clear. This wasn't de-escalating. It was unraveling. What had started as one patrol car on a quiet street had become something else entirely. Neighbors stood on porches. Kids whispered into phones. Bystanders recorded from parked cars. It was as if the whole block had frozen in place, waiting for someone, anyone, to move. Renee Mallory sat still, hands resting calmly on the wheel. Her dark judicial robe, formal and deliberate, looked strangely out of place now, a symbol of order amid rising chaos. She glanced into the rearview mirror. Not in fear. More like a judge surveying a courtroom before issuing a ruling. Travis stood off to the side, arms crossed, chewing his bottom lip. He kept scanning the crowd, unsure now what he was holding on to, only that he couldn't let go. Across the street, a voice rang out. "That's Judge Mallory. She's been on the bench longer than he's been out of high school." A teenage boy, maybe 16, phone in hand, nodded toward the car. "You all right in there, Mum?" Renee didn't answer right away. She gave a small nod, quiet, steady, just enough for anyone watching. It wasn't gratitude. It was clarity. "I'm handling it." Then she turned, speaking out the side window to Travis. "You've made yourself clear. I'd like to leave now." He said nothing. "I am requesting to leave," she repeated, firmer. "Unless you are formally detaining me, Officer Brenner." More phones lifted. The air thickened. Marcy looked from Renee to Travis, then back again. "You need to let her go," she said quietly. "She could have swapped plates," Travis muttered, more to himself than anyone else. Marcy's eyes narrowed. "You're reaching." "I'm just doing my job." "No," she said flatly. "You're digging your heels in." Renee rolled her window down another inch, her voice calm but cutting. "Officer Keller," she said, "I believe you're familiar with me." Marcy nodded. "Yes, ma'am." "Then I trust you understand how many layers of wrong this is becoming." Another nod, slower, heavier. Marcy stepped closer to the car, her voice lowered, almost careful. "Judge, I'd advise you to stay in the vehicle just a few more minutes, while we sort this out." Renee didn't flinch. "You mean while you talk him down?" "I mean," Marcy said carefully, "while I prevent this from becoming something it shouldn't." The street was lined now, 24 people at least. Someone had gone live. The chat buzzed in real time. "This is happening right now in Colombia." "She's a judge. Why is he still holding her?" "That second cop looks like she wants to disappear." Renee opened the glove compartment. Deliberate, controlled. She pulled out a second ID, her judicial badge, and held it to the window. Marcy leaned in, squinting, then turned to Travis. "She's good to go. Everything checks out, including this," she added, raising the badge for him to see. "We're letting her leave." Travis didn't move, arms crossed tighter, jaw clenched. Something inside him was fraying, but he couldn't name it. His radio crackled with static. He ignored it. "Travis," Marcy said again, her voice firmer this time. "You're done here." Still, he didn't step back. So Renee did something unexpected. She turned off the engine, then slowly, quietly, opened the door and stepped out. The crowd reacted, a ripple of gasps and held breath. She stood tall, her robe catching in the light breeze, hands relaxed at her sides. "This is what it takes," she said, her voice strong, clear enough for the street to hear. "For a black woman to be heard." Phones lowered, slowly, not out of resolution, but out of weight. The silence wasn't peace. It was pressure, heavy, pulsing, alive. Travis's hand drifted near his belt. Marcy snapped, "Don't!" Sharp, commanding. He froze. Renee turned her gaze to him, unwavering. "You're not the law," she said. "The law is written. It's studied, upheld by people who've earned the right to interpret it. You enforce it, but only if you remember what it means." But this wasn't the end. It was the moment the world leaned in. Phones recording, eyes wide, history holding its breath. Travis couldn't hear clearly anymore, not from noise, from pressure. His vision darted, faces in the crowd, some smirking, others folded in silence. No backup, no superior. Just Marcy's eyes on him, steady as a spotlight. And Judge Mallory, composed, dignified, exposing everything he wished to hide. Still, part of him rebelled. If he let her walk, he'd look weak. Worse, he'd look wrong. So he stepped forward. One pace. "Ma'am," he said tightly, "I'm asking you to return to your vehicle." Renee didn't move. "Are you detaining me?" He swallowed hard. "You're interfering with a police investigation." The crowd shifted. A few people laughed, short and sharp. Someone near a mailbox muttered, "He's grasping now." Marcy turned to him, her voice low, clipped. "That's not going to hold. You're improvising, and it's not policy." She refused to comply. "No," Marcy cut in. "She complied with everything you asked, until it got personal." Travis's fists balled. Renee stood still, her voice steady. "You're inventing charges. That's misconduct," he snapped, voice raised. "Get back in the car." That's when the woman live streaming raised her voice. "For real?" she said. "This man's about to arrest a judge because she made him look stupid." Renee took a step forward. Not aggressive, just enough to speak without shouting. "Officer Brenner," Renee said, her tone calm but unshakable. "If you place your hands on me without cause, you'll be making a career-ending decision." He blinked. "Is that a threat?" "It's a fact." A long pause stretched between them. Then, slowly, he reached for her wrist. Not yanking, not rough, but enough. And just like that, the crowd erupted. "Yo, you touching her now? She's a judge!" "Get your hands off her, man." Marcy moved instantly. "Travis, back off." She wedged herself between them, eyes locked on him. "Let go, right now." He did. His hand dropped. He took a step back, lips parted, breath shaky. He looked completely lost. Renee turned to the crowd. "I will be filing a formal complaint," she said clearly. "I will be requesting the full release of all body cam footage, dash cam too. And I strongly recommend that anyone filming tonight hold on to your video." A cheer rose, brief, restrained, but loud enough to cut through the last threads of tension. Travis tried to reset, to find control again, but it was too late. The crowd had turned, and Marcy wasn't beside him anymore. She was beside Renee. "You good to drive, Judge?" she asked gently. "I was good before this started," Renee replied. She stepped back into her car, adjusted the mirror, started the engine. The door closed with a soft click that somehow sounded louder than all the shouting. She didn't floor it, didn't make a scene. She pulled away smooth, steady, her tail lights fading into the night. Travis stood there, hands on hips, adrift. Marcy finally broke the silence. You just tried to detain a sitting judge over a car she owns, on a hunch you couldn't prove. You escalated. You ignored dispatch confirmation. You dragged it out until it collapsed on top of you. He turned, his voice bitter. You siding with her? I'm siding with the law, Marcy replied. You didn't follow it. Travis looked away, jaw working, chewing the inside of his cheek. Across the street, someone shouted, Better get ready for the lawsuit. And just like that, the air shifted, from heat to weight. But the night wasn't over. Not for Travis, not for the department, and definitely not for Judge Mallory. By sunrise, it was everywhere. The live stream clip, barely 4 minutes, had over 300,000 views. Judge Renee Mallory was trending. Her name sat beside words like racial profiling abuse of authority body cam silence. Local news picked it up first. WLTX led the morning with the story. By midday, national outlets were calling. Inside the Columbia Police Department, the mood was thick, bitter, and quiet. The usual chatter, the burnt coffee, all gone. Chief Harold Epps walked into the briefing room, expression unreadable. He didn't greet anyone, just dropped a folded headline on the table. South Carolina, judge wrongly targeted in traffic stop. Was her robe the real threat? Travis sat in the corner, trying not to fidget, but the eyes found him anyway, lingering, judging, not just at him. At Marcy, too, the one who stepped in, the one who didn't back him up. Chief Epps turned to Travis. You filed your incident report? Yes, sir. I read it. Doesn't match what's on camera. Travis didn't respond. We're initiating an internal review. You're on administrative leave, effective immediately. Silence. Then a small voice from Travis. With pay? Appius nodded. Standard protocol, but don't mistake that for support. Across town, Judge Mallory sat in her kitchen. The robe was gone, replaced by a t-shirt and sweats. She sipped black coffee, long gone cold. Her phone buzzed nonstop. Friends, clerks, reporters, colleagues. She answered none of them. Instead, she watched the video. Again. Watched herself from the outside. Her posture, his reach, the crowd's shift. The moment his fingers brushed her wrist. It didn't surprise her, but it still cut. Not because it happened, but because she'd always known it could. Her eyes drifted to a framed photo on the fridge. Her father, in uniform, a black patrol officer in Columbia back in the 1970s. He'd warned her, the robe doesn't change how some people see you. They'll look past it. She used to believe she could outgrow that truth. She hadn't. At noon, her clerk Amy arrived. White, mid-30s, loyal to a fault. She walked in like she was stepping onto a minefield. I brought the docket for tomorrow. Thought maybe you'd want to prep. Mallory didn't look up. You think I should go in? Amy hesitated. I think if you don't, they'll say it's because you were afraid. A beat. You think I'm afraid? No, ma'am. I think you're tired. Mallory let the silence stretch. Then finally she said, I'll be in court. Same time. That evening, a protest formed outside the Columbia Police Department. Not massive, maybe 100 people, but loud, clear. Signs read, Power is not equal to permission. Who judges the police? Someone had printed stills from the body cam footage, mounted them like placards. One image had already gone viral. Judge Mallory, standing outside her Mercedes, robe rippling in the breeze, eyes locked on Officer Brenner, like a verdict being delivered in real time. Inside, Travis sat at his desk, alone, packing his things into a cardboard box. He could hear the chants from the street, his name echoing every so often. He wasn't angry. Not anymore. He was confused. He'd followed instinct. What he thought was right. What felt suspicious. Now it just felt wrong. He looked at a photo on his desk. His wife and daughter, smiling on a beach in Myrtle last summer. Toes in the sand. Sunscreen smudges. He wondered how he'd explain this to his daughter. How to talk about a mistake without becoming the villain. A light knock on the doorframe. Marcy. You okay? He shrugged. She leaned against the wall. I didn't want it to go like that, she said, but you didn't give me a choice. I know, she crossed her arms. Ever think, maybe what feels normal to you is the thing that needs fixing? He looked up, eyes tired. Yeah, I'm starting to. But understanding doesn't erase consequences. And the city wasn't waiting for him to catch up. Before she was Judge Mallory, before the courtroom command, the sharp rulings, the robe, she was Renee Parker. From Aiken County, South Carolina. Her mother taught second grade for 31 years. Her father, Thomas Parker, wore a patrolman's badge that barely covered the bills. 6'1". Soft voice. Came home quiet. Renee remembered one night in 1982 like it was yesterday. She was 17, headed to her weekend shift at the Piggly Wiggly. When a deputy stopped her that night, he said it was for suspicious behavior. She was walking alone, a paper bag of snacks in one hand, a textbook in the other. He made her sit on the curb for 30 minutes, asking the same questions over and over. Where do you live? What are you doing out here? Why don't you have ID? She did. She showed it 3 times. It didn't matter. Her father arrived, furious, but composed. He told her not to cry, not in front of them. Some people don't want to believe you belong in certain places. Your job is to remind them you do, without yelling. That stuck. She spent the next decades working twice as hard, checking every box, building her reputation brick by brick. Undergrad at Spelman, law degree from Duke, years as a public defender, a slow, steady rise to the bench. She became known for her fairness, strict but never cruel, precise, no room for error. That's how she survived. But after that traffic stop, survival didn't feel like the goal anymore. She thought about all of that as she watched the city change around her. Billboards with her face, once celebratory, were now looped in news segments, captioned beneath headlines about race and justice. In one interview, a legal analyst said, "Judge Mallory represents a painful paradox. She is the law, yet not immune to how it's selectively enforced." At a cafe near 5 Points, 2 students argued over lattes at a back table. One, a white political science major, said Officer Brenner had made a mistake. Sure, but that didn't mean he was a bad cop. The other, a black sociology grad, shook his head. It's not about Brenner. It's about a system where a judge can be mistaken for a suspect just by sitting in her own car. The same debate unfolded in living rooms, classrooms, barber shops. Everyone had an opinion. The real question wasn't just what happened, but why it keeps happening. Meanwhile, Officer Travis Brenner sat on his back porch in Northeast Columbia, flipping through his own memories. He hadn't been raised to be a bully. His dad was a fireman. His mom was a nurse. He didn't grow up hating anyone. But he had grown up hearing things. Don't let your guard down in certain neighborhoods. People will lie to you before you even ask. Better safe than sorry. He used to think those were just cautious sayings. Now they sounded like quiet rules, handed down without question, calcified into instinct. He remembered the academy, the drills, the lectures, the emphasis on compliance. but not once did anyone talk about what it meant to be wrong. He thought back to Mallory's face. The moment she said, "You don't see me." And she was right. He hadn't. Not then. He saw a silhouette, a possibility, a stereotype. And the badge made it feel okay to act on that. Now, he wasn't sure what the badge gave him anymore. He glanced over at the patio table. A copy of the court docket sat beside his cold coffee. Mallory's testimony was scheduled in 2 days. He wasn't expected to attend. But maybe he should. Because public consequences aren't the same as private reckonings. And both were coming fast. The hearing took place in a modest municipal building on Hardin Street, not far from where it all started. No marble columns, no grand press wall, just a small room with stiff-backed chairs and too much air between words. Water pitchers and cameras packed the room shoulder to shoulder. Judge Mallory sat at the table, her posture as usual, straight, controlled, hands folded. But not as the judge today. She was here as a witness. Travis Brenner entered through a side door, not in uniform, but in a navy jacket and khakis, his shoulders tight, eyes wary. No one applauded, no one sneered. Just silence. The kind that demands more than noise ever could. The Oversight Committee, a 5-member panel, sat at the head of the room. Their role was clear: review the body cam footage, assess officer conduct, and decide if disciplinary action was warranted. On paper, it was procedural. But everyone knew this was about more than Travis. It was about something deeper, older, more complicated, harder to unravel. The footage played on a monitor. No narration, no commentary, just the moment of the stop. The tone in his voice, the way she explained again and again, the hand near the holster, the wrist grab at 11:17. Then the screen flickered. A 40-second gap. Silence. Committee chair. Vera Lindell, a retired judge from Charleston, paused the video, adjusting her glasses. "Officer Brenner," she said, "can you explain why your body cam audio dropped during that section?" Travis cleared his throat. "I don't know. Might have been a malfunction." "Are you aware," Vera pressed, "that your department logs show your hand brushed the mute toggle at that exact moment?" He didn't answer immediately. Finally, "Yes." Vera leaned forward. "So, the footage goes silent exactly when things escalate. That's either extremely convenient or extremely concerning." Travis glanced down. Renee sat, expression unreadable. Not smug, not angry, just watching. Later, when invited to speak, her voice steady and clear, she retold the story. Not to defend, but to remind the room that trust isn't just about rules. It's about restraint, judgment, respect. "Every day," she said, "I sit behind a bench and decide if someone deserves leniency or punishment, if they're dangerous or deceitful. I do it knowing the system is already tilted in ways many refuse to admit. That night, it tilted again, and I had to carry it. Even though I'd done nothing wrong." She glanced briefly at Travis, then back to the committee. "The uniform doesn't give someone the right to ignore facts. It gives them the responsibility to honor them." Outside, a few dozen protesters gathered behind barricades, news crews circling. The crowd had shrunk, but the tension hadn't. Back inside, the panel broke for deliberation. 30 minutes later, they returned. Vera didn't mince words. "The panel finds Officer Brenner engaged in conduct unbecoming of his position. His actions were excessive, unsupported by evidence, and suggest a pattern inconsistent with departmental standards." Travis blinked. "We recommend a 60-day unpaid suspension and mandatory bias retraining, pending final departmental approval. Further violations will result in immediate termination." Gasps and murmurs filled the room. Some said it was too lenient, others thought it too harsh. But Renee remained still, her face unreadable. She stood, gathered her coat, thanked the committee, and walked out. Outside, a reporter thrust a microphone toward her. "Judge Mallory, do you feel justice was served?" She paused. "I don't believe in justice as a single moment," she said. "It's a practice, and tonight was just one part of it." Across the street, Travis stood alone beneath a tree, watching cars pass by. His suspension would begin the next day. No badge, no gun, just time. Time to reflect on how quickly authority can turn into harm, if you're not careful. A few minutes later, Marcy joined him. "You good?" she asked. He didn't answer right away. "I don't think I'm supposed to be good. I think I'm supposed to be honest." She nodded slowly. "Maybe you're finally starting. But honesty is just the first step. What comes next? That's what defines you." The next morning, Renee sat alone in her chambers at the Richland County Courthouse. Sunlight spilled across the floor, warming the edge of her desk. She had arrived an hour earlier than usual, not to prepare for a heavy docket, but to sit, to think, to breathe. There were letters on her desk, some handwritten, some typed, notes from strangers, a thank you card from a law student, an email from a retired judge in Ohio. Words like grace, strength, and clarity appeared more times than she could count. But the words that stayed with her were scrawled at the bottom of a folded envelope. From someone she didn't know. "You reminded me that staying calm doesn't mean staying silent." She read it twice, then a third time. At 9 a.m., the courtroom door opened. First case of the day. A probation review. A teenage boy, 16, maybe 17, walked in with his public defender. His shirt tucked in too tight, like someone had told him to look presentable. Renee recognized the nervous shuffle, the rigid stance she'd seen for decades. This was the part of her job most people didn't see. Deciding, with limited facts, whether someone needed another chance, or if the system had to step in. She reviewed the file. School suspension, minor theft, no prior record, single-parent home. His voice cracked as he answered her questions, but he held eye contact, and that mattered. She glanced at his mother, wringing her hands with the quiet strength of someone used to praying through courtrooms. Renee leaned back in her chair. "Tell me something," she said, softly but clearly. "Do you know why you're standing here today?" The boy nodded. "Because I made a mistake." "Sure," she said, "but that's not the whole answer. You're standing here because you were caught. The real question is, do you understand the kind of man you're becoming?" He looked down, then back up. "I don't want to be in this room again." "I believe that," she said, "but belief isn't enough." She paused, then closed the folder. "I'm continuing your probation, without extension. No jail. But next time, there won't be another conversation. Understand?" "Yes, ma'am." She tapped the gavel, quick and quiet. Case closed. The boy's shoulders dropped in relief. His mother exhaled hard. For a moment, the courtroom wasn't heavy, just still. Renee walked to her car, same Mercedes, same parking spot. She sat behind the wheel and stared into the rearview mirror, thinking about how that mirror had once reflected flashing lights, suspicion, and a badge that didn't care who she was. How quickly power could swing dangerously when it landed in the wrong hands. But the lesson wasn't just for Officer Brenner. It was for everyone. For every kid who thinks the robe means protection. For every cop who thinks the badge means permission. For every system that believes neutrality is enough. As she pulled out of the parking lot, she noticed a small group of high school students walking along the sidewalk carrying clipboards. One of them stopped, looked up, and waved. "Judge Mallory," he shouted. "We saw your video in class." She smiled gently. "Good or bad?" she asked. "Both," he yelled back. "But it made us talk." And that, she thought, was something. Across town, Travis sat in his kitchen staring at a blank notepad. At the top were the words, "Bias Reflection Assignment." He was supposed to write 500 words about how his assumptions shaped the traffic stop. He'd tried 3 times, writing and ripping up each attempt. This time, though, he wrote one sentence first. "I didn't see her. Not as a person, not as a judge, not even as someone with a name." Then he kept writing, not because it would undo what happened, but because silence was no longer safe. Not for him, not for anyone. What we choose to see, or refuse to, can cost people more than their dignity. It can cost them their peace, their safety, their future. If there's one thing this story leaves behind, it's this: power means nothing without responsibility. And respect means everything, especially when it's hardest to give. If this story made you pause, made you think, or made you feel, subscribe, because we have more stories to tell. And sometimes, one voice is all it takes to change the direction of 1,000 others.